We began this week the reading of the book of Numbers, the fourth book in the Torah, and the book of Numbers begins with order. The Israelites are counted, tribe by tribe, clan by clan, family by family. Every tribe has its place, every banner its position, every person their location within the collective. The opening section reads almost like a blueprint, a people organized with precision, ready to set out toward the promised land. And we know what this book will become. The book of Numbers will become a book of rebellion, fear, disorientation, complaint, violence, grief, and death. It will tell the story of a generation that leaves Egypt full of possibility and never reaches the promised land. What begins in order slowly dissolves into chaos. In Hebrew, the book of Numbers is called Bemidbar, in the wilderness. And perhaps that word refers not only to a place, but to a condition of consciousness. There are at least two ways of understanding the wilderness. One is lyrical, even hopeful. Rabbi David Silver describes the wilderness as a place of growth and opportunity, where one leaves everything behind and starts afresh. Erica Brown writes about the expansiveness of the wilderness, how its vastness humbles us, strips away illusion, and creates the possibility of wisdom and revelation. But there is another wilderness altogether. Aviva Zornberg describes the wilderness as an environment that is inimical to human life. The landscape, she writes, does not yield to human demands. It frustrates not only the need for food and water, but the basic demand for direction, for markings to indicate a human mapping of blank space. The wilderness is, she says, pathless, bewildering to the human imagination. And then she writes, a kind of horror besets the mind. Her book is aptly called Bewilderments. Already traumatized by Egypt, the Israelites enter a landscape that strips away familiarity, orientation, certainty, and control. And perhaps that is closer to where we find ourselves now. Some 40 years ago, many of us believed that history was turning. The Berlin Wall fell, apartheid ended, the Oslo Accord suggested the possibility of peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Liberal democracy appeared to be expanding. There remained, despite wars and failures and injustices, a broad confidence that history was bending, even if in a long and winding way, toward greater freedom, justice, and human dignity. Then came the murder of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, the Second Intifada, September 11, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the consolidation of authoritarianism and illiberalism around the world, the erosion of democratic norms and institutions and of civil rights, the alarming degradation of public life, the rise of anti-immigrant xenophobia and open anti-Semitism, Ukraine, October 7th, the devastation of Gaza, messianic extremism unleashed, and a new war in the Middle East with no end in sight. The growing sense that we have entered a world where power answers to nothing beyond itself. And perhaps most painfully, a whole generation is now coming of age without a memory of hope. By the end of book of Bemidbar, the entire generation that left Egypt and that received the Torah dies because of their faithlessness. The tragedy of Bemidbar is not merely that a generation dies in the wilderness. It is that a certain consciousness proves incapable of entering the future. Again and again, the Israelites long to return to Egypt. They cannot tolerate uncertainty, ambiguity, vulnerability, or freedom. Egypt remains inside them long after they have physically left it behind. The 40 years in the wilderness are not merely punishment. They represent the painful collapse of one way of being before another can emerge. The Midrash makes this point with a striking metaphor. Commenting on the verse in Genesis, and God separated the light from the darkness, Bereshit Rabbah teaches that this separation refers to the book of Bemidbar, which divides the generation that left Egypt from the generation that will enter the land. One generation is called darkness, the next one light. According to the Midrash, the older generation is evil, the new one pure. But beyond the dualism and the stark generational contrast, the Midrash suggests that history sometimes requires painful acts of separation between one moral imagination and another, between ways of seeing that can no longer sustain life and those that may open a better future. The wilderness becomes the space of separation between them. The generation that witnessed the plagues, crossed the sea, and stood at Sinai cannot complete the journey. Something in that consciousness cannot cross into the future. The wilderness becomes not only a place of wandering, but of painful clarification. And so the Torah forces us to ask a difficult question. What must die in the wilderness? I do not mean who must die. I mean what in us cannot cross into the future unchanged. Perhaps what must die is the illusion that history inevitably progresses toward justice, or the belief that technological or economic advancement automatically produces moral advancement, or the fantasy that power alone can save us. Perhaps what must die is our holding on to certainty, the inability to imagine the humanity of those we fear, the inclination to remain in the place of permanent victims and therefore justify everything we do, the moral apathy that ongoing violence and fear can produce. That is why Bemidbar is such a frightening book. The generation that leaves Egypt carried deep trauma. Trauma teaches survival, and survival must not, of course, be dismissed. But trauma can also limit moral imagination. It can perpetuate fear. It can make power feel like the only guarantee of safety. It can make vulnerability intolerable. We know this personally, collectively, and historically. We know about exile, powerlessness, hatred, anti-Semitism. And we also know something else now, how fear and trauma can mutate when joined to power. That too is Bemidbar. The wilderness is noisy and chaotic, full of complaint, rebellion, accusation, demagoguery, violence, and fear. That's all in this book of Bemidbar. Those who should guide us have lost their way, and no one seems to know the way forward. But this is precisely what the wilderness teaches us. When the loudest voices offer only certainty, when institutions and leaders disappoint us, we are thrown back into something harder and more demanding. We are thrown back into questioning and asking, into learning, into wrestling with what is true and what is required of us. That is what the Torah asks of us in the wilderness. Not submission to answers, but the refusal to stop questioning. Not certainty, but the commitment to strengthen our moral core when everything around us is eroding. To not allow fear to take over and guide us. To not let rage or tribalism or the comfort of simple answers replace the hard work of moral seriousness. The wilderness wants to make that work feel impossible. It wants to exhaust us, so we'll surrender into the belief that power is all there is, that the questions don't matter, that we can never become who we are required to be. That is why the Torah is given in the wilderness, not was given. The Torah is given in the wilderness. We don't say Natan HaTorah in the past tense. Gave the Torah, God gave the Torah in the past tense. We say Noten HaTorah in the present tense. God continues to give us the Torah in our present wilderness. Shavuot after Shavuot, Shabbat after Shabbat, day after day, God continues to give us the Torah in our present wilderness. Not when certainty returns, not when history resolves itself, not once order has been established, but in the wilderness itself, in the chaos, in the disappointment, in the place where we are now. This is where Torah is given. Revelation does not wait for clarity. Torah arrives precisely when all certainties collapse and we are forced to confront who we have become. It matters most when we are most tempted to surrender, to fear, to power, to despair, to the comfort of simple answers. We do not know how long our journey in this present wilderness will last. Nobody knows. The generation in Bemidbar did not know either. But maybe that is not the question. The question is not when does the wilderness end. The question is who we become while we are in it. Whether we can hold on to ambiguity and uncertainty when certainty feels safer. Whether we can see the humanity of others when fear tells us not to. Whether we can keep wrestling with what is true and what is required of us and refuse to let go. Whether we can remain capable of moral seriousness when the world around us is not. And whether after all the wandering, we may become worthy of crossing into a different future. Shabbat Shalom.